It was snowing at the mountaintop at night where a barbarian and a knight faced each other. Dead bodies were scattered all around. The knight, surprised, asked the barbarian how he had escaped his restraints with brute strength alone. However, due to the language difference, they couldn't understand each other. The knight still asked the barbarian, who responded by stating his name, Eric of the Stone Axe tribe, while wielding his sword. The knight continued, saying that Uric might be a warrior, but as a warrior of such skill, he must also know about honor. He then introduced himself, stressing each syllable of his name, Portgal Arton, Knight of the Empire. Uric understood the meaning and said that he would remember Portgal's name. With a fierce determination, he dashed at Portgal, who had already planned to knock Uric's sword away with his shield and finish him off while he was helpless. However, as soon as Uric got closer, he immediately threw his sword away, shocking Portgal with this unexpected act. Uric, confident in his hand-to-hand combat skills, punched Portgal square in the face. Portgal let out a cry of anger as he retaliated by banging his shield against Uric with all his might. The force of the blow sent Uric staggering backward, but he quickly regained his footing. Portgal then immediately attempted to deliver a killing blow to Uric with his shield, only to be defeated in a single, swift slash from Uric's hidden dagger. The blade cut deep and Portgal crumpled to the ground. Exhausted and dizzy from the nerve-tingling fight, Uric collapsed to the ground. Breathing heavily, he looked up at the beautiful sight of the starry sky, the cold air filling his lungs. The snow continued to fall gently around him, and for a moment the harshness of the battle seemed to fade away. Uric's mind drifted as he lay there, reflecting on the fight and the warrior he had just defeated. He knew he had been pushed to his limits and the victory had come at a cost. As his vision blurred, he took solace in the serene beauty of the night, allowing himself a brief moment of peace amidst the chaos. An old shaman told Uric that he would become a great warrior, but Uric did not believe in stuffs like shamans or fortune-telling. The shaman kept talking as she took a puff from what she is taking. She said that she saw a vision of him in a nightmare becoming a warrior of light. But Uric does not take the shaman seriously, to which she threw a pebble at him, to which he left right away. The shaman then asked if he is going hunting with other warriors of his age, that the chieftain's son is going to be jealous, to which he retorted that he is not going to fight with him over the spot as chief. However, she warned him that others are not thinking the same way, because Uric's name comes up a lot when discussing the next chief, to which he said that he does not want to be the chief, and there's no one to make him do it. He later met with the other warriors, of which one of them asked him if he is back from visiting the shaman again, to which he replied that he would not be able to sleep well if the shaman dies alone, so he had to check every once in a while to see if she is fine. Meanwhile, the warriors were worried about the fact that they are going up to the Sky Mountain Range again, as the world beyond the mountain range is filled with souls, so they are concerned that if they cross the mountain range, then they might not be able to come back. Uric then replied that the chieftain's son recently caught a wolf, the size of a calf, so they have to go up the mountain range if they want to catch bigger prey than that, as they cannot let themselves fall behind. He also added that even the adults would go to the base of the mountain range, so they would just hunt around there as well. He even teased them that if the other warriors do not want to, then they are cowards. The warriors all got riled up as they do not want to be called a coward, to which they all head towards the Sky Mountain Range. After climbing for a while, they were still unable to climb up halfway. Uric wondered what is beyond the Sky Mountain Range, and if a world for the deceased really exists like the shaman and elders said. He wondered if they would all become souls when they die and fly over the Sky Mountain Range. Vold, one of the warriors with Uric, asked him if he really has no thoughts about becoming the chieftain. However, he is not interested, but he just hates how the chieftain's son acts like he is special when he is not. This is the reason why Vold and others wanted Uric to be the chief. Vold kept teasing that if the chief's son became the chief, Uric would not listen to him. Uric did not give him a clear answer, to which they kept moving. However, Yurik suddenly felt something was wrong and he immediately yelled that everyone should get down. The moment those words came out, a barrage of arrows fell on the warriors, hitting most of them. Barak gave the order to load up the arrow and fire back as he helped Vold to take cover. He wondered if the attack was from another tribe, but he found out how elaborate and sharp the arrowheads were. He had never seen something like that before. At the time, a fully armored man gave a silent order of attack to his men who moved stealthily in the mountain range. Eric observed and discovered that the enemies have longer range than them and have the high ground. He looked at his fellow barbarians who were injured. He thought about the fact that he was the one who said that they should go deep into the mountains, so he had to take the responsibility, to which he asked Vold to take the wounded and go back down first, so that he would hold the enemies off. Vold did not agree, as he claimed he cannot leave him behind as they are sworn brothers. However, he told them that it would be better for him if they were not here, so they would not get in his way. He insisted that saving his brothers is also important, to which Vold reluctantly agreed, but he told Yurik that he must come back alive, who then replied that the shaman said he would become a great warrior, which means this is not yet his time, as he proudly called out his name. He immediately took cover behind a huge boulder as he couldn't figure out the exact location of the enemies, so he decided to throw his spear and then approach as quickly as possible. As soon as he came out of his hiding, the enemies shot a rain of arrows at him, to which he also sent his spear flying at the direction, which hit one of the enemies, to which he dashed towards the source of cry. On getting there, he saw a group of men dressed in full armor and could not even understand the language they were even saying. These are the humans beyond the mountains. He asked if they came from the other side of the mountains, but they did not understand what he was saying, to which they decided that he is no ordinary fellow, so they wouldn't let down their guard. He didn't understand what they are saying. He had made up his mind to deal with them since they have injured his brothers. At that moment, the fully armored knight Sir Portgal asked his fellow knights to lower their bows. The other knights tried to discuss with Sir Portgal that they should shoot the barbarian down, but he insisted that they should capture the barbarian alive, that he would make a good present to his imperial majesty to commemorate the discovery of a new land. Beric seized up his opponent, Sir Portgal, considering the fact that his entire body is covered in iron plates. Sir Portgal threw his shield away, as he is not scared of the barbarian's axe, saying that it can pierce the armor. Beric noticed this gesture as well. He knew that knight has quite the confidence in his armor. As they got ready for the battle, Sir Portgal held his blade backward, which is the Empire's swordsmanship blade holding, but Yurik felt insulted by this act, thinking that he was being looked down on. He could see that they are trying to capture him alive. Sir Portgal charged at him, to which he retaliated by flinging his axe into the visor, nicking him on his forehead. Sir Portgal was totally shocked by the accuracy of the axe, which got wedged in his visor. He was shocked by the fact that a mere barbarian could think of such strategy. He got enraged and attacked Yurik by striking his blade handle at him, which he dodged and gave him a kick on his face, sending Sir Portgal flying backward. Yurik wanted to deliver the killing blow, but was stopped by other knights who fired their arrows, to which one of them hit him squarely in the back. With lightning speed, they immediately strangle him with their ropes until he blacks out, so he would stop using his strength. Later in the night, he woke up from his blackout. He saw the knights taking some warmth from the fire they made, wondering if he could survive until they got to the Imperial Majesty. Yurik was totally convinced that they are really people from beyond the mountains. The knights tried to hurry up in setting the camp before Sir Portgal comes back from collecting fuel. As he struggled with difficulty to get up, he realized that there is a different world of humans beyond the Sky Mountain range, and it's not the world for the souls of the dead like what the shamans had said. He felt that he is going to freeze to death. He immediately tried to escape from his restraints. Meanwhile, the knights looked at him snickering, to which he suddenly got up all of a sudden, to which he began to walk toward them. He told them to know that the person who killed them is the great Yurik of the Stone Axe tribe.
Chapter 3. He killed all the knights until the ground was soaked with blood. Their bodies lay scattered, lifeless and motionless, a testament to the brutal battle that had just occurred. With a resolute expression, he reached up and grasped his ponytail. In one swift motion, he cut it off, letting the severed hair fall to the ground. It was a symbolic act, a sign of shedding his past and embracing a new identity. He then picked up a cloak from one of the fallen knights and draped it over his shoulders, pulling the hood over his head. The next day, in a different part of the land, a group of bullies was tormenting the young man. The young man, terrified and desperate, tried to run, but his fear made him clumsy. He stumbled and fell to the ground, unable to escape. The bullies quickly surrounded him, smirking with malicious glee. One of them, a particularly cruel individual, suggested they should cut off his fingers with a sword. The young man's eyes widened in horror as he saw the glint of the blade. Desperate, he pleaded with them to let him go. Just then, a sound came from the bushes nearby. The rustling grew louder, drawing the attention of the bullies and the young man. Out of the bushes stepped Yurik, now dressed in full clothes and the cloak he had taken the day before. His presence was commanding, and he exuded an air of quiet strength. The young man's eyes lit up with a mix of hope and desperation. He recognized Yurik as a potential savior and immediately called out to him for help, promising to give him a reward. However, he did not comprehend what he was saying, so he approached them, to which the bullies confronted him and ordered him to leave. Despite his inability to understand them, he responded that he was simply curious about what they were attempting to do. The bullies were confused as well, asking if he was a foreigner because it was their first time hearing the language. Then one of them approached him, threatening him that if he wanted to die here, away from his motherland, Yurik became enraged and snapped the bully's head right away. Others were taken aback by how things had turned out, and the others quickly came at him in rage, demanding vengeance, to which he just snapped their heads with one hand for each. The young man was taken aback when he witnessed how quickly the bullies were dispatched. Yurik then created an illustration of a village on the ground for the young man to help him find his tribe. The young man led Yurik out of the rugged mountain range, guiding him towards the distant outline of a sprawling city. As they approached, the vastness of the cityscape came into view. The young man proudly pointed towards the bustling urban center, revealing its name, Ankara. Ankara was a significant hub, thriving on its copper mines, which supported a large and diverse population. Yurik gazed in awe at the city's impressive size and the sheer volume of people moving about. The streets were lined with a mix of vibrant markets, industrious workshops, and grand buildings, reflecting the city's economic prosperity. The contrast between the serene, isolated mountains and the dynamic, crowded city left Yurik both amazed and somewhat disoriented. The young man observed Yurik's reactions closely. Initially, he had thought Yurik might be a mere traveler, passing through by chance. However, it soon became apparent that Yurik's lack of familiarity with the city and its environment suggested a deeper level of unfamiliarity with the world beyond the mountains. This realization piqued the young man's curiosity as he pondered the extent of Yurik's isolation or previous experiences. As evening approached, the young man guided Yurik to an inn situated in a quieter part of the city. The inn was a cozy establishment with warm, inviting lights and the aroma of hearty meals wafting from within. Once inside, the young man prepared to engage Yurik in conversation, hoping to learn more about his origins and intentions. However, when the young man attempted to ask Yurik about where he came from, the communication faltered due to the language barrier. The man even asked around if there's anyone who understands Yurik's language, to which some of the people suggest that he looks like a northerner, which means that since he cannot speak the Empire's language, then he must be somewhere way out in the countryside. So they discovered that Yurik is barbarian from his body stature. Yurik knew that if these people knew that he was from beyond the Sky Mountain range, their attitude towards might change, so he had to be careful. The young man then decided to get Yurik something to drink while they looked for an interpreter. Meanwhile, Yurik was quite impressed by the coins the man brought out, as it looked like it's made from very delicate workmanship.
He noticed that the man exchanged the coin with the alcohol, to which he realized that it's quite different from trading dried meats and leather, like they do in the tribe. They simply barter, but this here is currency. After a while, two men came in chatting with each other, to which they ordered beers for themselves. Yurik saw a very exquisite axe strapped at the back of one of the men. He could see that the weapons here are much stronger than the ones he used, which means that their own craftsmanship is much more developed than theirs. He even began to drool at the sight of the axes, to which he asked the man with him about what he would have to do to have such an axe. The man noticed Urik's interest, to which he decided to take the advantage of Urik's excellent fighting skills. So he gestured as he explained to Urik that he would need a lot of coins to get the axe, so he brought him to Ankara's fight arena. The man tried to explain using digrams and gestures that Urik is not allowed to kill his opponents when fighting, as it's against the rules. Urik understood what he meant, but he was worried that the opponents might be too weak for him and could die just from a light tap. However, he knew that everything here is all based on money, and he could see that all the men here are weaker than him. He was soon arranged with his opponent, a gladiator. The match commenced, but he could see from the gladiator's fighting moves that he is quite slow compared to the tribe's warrior, to which he just snapped the gladiator's hand and then brought his knee into his stomach, defeating him just like that. Urik could see that there are no real warriors here. Meanwhile, the spectators were shocked by the fact that the defending champion of the arena was defeated in a single hit. However, Urik knew that Portugal is quite a real warrior who was prepared for death, to which he hopes to meet a real warrior someday. Then the referee announced him as the winner of the match. The next day, Urik woke up from his sleep after drinking himself to stupor last night after winning the match. The young man urged him to hurry up so they can make more money, explaining that he had been loafing off for a few months and racked up a lot of credit at the tavern, so they have to make more money so Urik would be able to get the axe he wants. Meanwhile, Urik was still feeling groggy from the drink, to which he managed to get up, and they headed over to the fighting arena. They get to the arena, to which the spectators are singing Urik's name, calling him the undefeated. Soon after, the fighters were called out, to which they faced each other. Meanwhile, Urik thought that his opponents were quite weak, so he wondered if he should just end it with the draw. The opponent made the first move, to which he punched into Urik's stomach, who was surprised, thinking that he had dodged the punch. However, the opponent then unleashed a barrage of punches, which Urik defended against, as he was still in shock, wondering if his body had gotten rusty. He became enraged that he gave a solid punch to the opponent's jaw, killing him in action. Everyone was shocked that he killed the opponent with just a punch. Meanwhile, the host sent him and the man outside the arena, since they have violated the rules. They both head back home, to which the man tried to explain to him that he would look into other ways to make money. The man later thought about it, as he realized that they can't earn money in Ankara anymore, to which he decided to wrap things up with Urik. Urik was back in the room. He reflected on his match earlier, where he could not control the strength of a simple, ordinary hit. He questioned the fact that he descended the mountains just to become a drunkard warrior. He then recalled how he had fought with Portugal, with their lives on the line in the Sky Mountain range as the blizzard raged around them. The reason why he turned his back on his homeland and came here was to see things that he didn't know existed. He realized that the days he spent at Ankara definitely felt like the final rest to him. However, a warrior like him can only rest after they die, not while he still draws breath. The next day, Urik was brought to another arena, of which he is surprised that he can still see it again, even though he had killed someone, but he noticed that there was no audience. However, he noticed a swordsman in the arena, to which they both react at the same time by moving their hands towards their sword.
The swordsman also noticed this and informed his boss that Urik has plenty of fighting experience, as he was able to grasp his sword right away and even readied himself, to which the boss then replied that he is worth buying then. Urik's man then told the boss that he does not need to whisper anything, as Urik can't speak imperial language, to which the boss then replied that he would have to take that into consideration, that Urik can't speak imperial when pricing him. Urik's man then said that they can just test Urik's fighting skills for themselves. He is planning to sell Urik as a slave gladiator. Urik and the swordsman both held wooden swords to spar. The swordsman made the first move as he wielded his sword at Urik, who just simply took the sword from his hand and then gave it back to him. The swordsman was shocked by what had just happened. Urik then threw his sword away and beckoned to him to attack. The swordsman got enraged and attacked again, but was easily dodged by him, as he said that he would like to stop all these childish games, as he had held the weapon with an edge ever since he was 5 years. The boss then stopped the fight as he said that he did not need to see any more proof, to which he began to negotiate with the man that brought Yurik. Meanwhile, Yurik noticed something and immediately charged at the man that brought him and then proceeded to cut off his hand that held the gold coins. The man yelled out in pain as he asked Yurik what he was doing. But to his surprise, Yurik spoke in imperial language, asking the man whom he called Donao to open his mouth so he could cut his tongue. Donao was completely shocked and even asked Yurik if he could understand the imperial language, apologizing and insisting that they were the best of friends. However, Yurik simply asked him to speak slowly and clearly, as he couldn't understand him if he spoke quickly. Afterward, Yurik cut off Donao's tongue. He then returned the sword to the swordsman, commenting that it was a sharp blade. The boss realized that Yurik was not someone they could easily control. He immediately said there was a misunderstanding and that they wanted to leave, but Yurik stopped them, asking where they were going. He insisted that they continue negotiating with him, and the boss reluctantly agreed. Horus then explained that a free gladiator would receive half of each match's earnings with the provision that they would handle his food and board. When Yurik inquired about the Imperial, Horus clarified that it was not necessary for a gladiator. Horus then introduced himself properly as Horus, a slave merchant and gladiator middleman. Yurik introduced himself in turn. Horus welcomed him to his gladiator troupe. Yurik went to where the slave gladiators were. Another gladiator saw him and asked him what he was doing there. Wondering if Yurik is a northerner looking for his kin, Yurik told him that he does not have relations to the north and that he is just bad at the Empire's language, which may bring the doubt of him being a northerner. The gladiator had thought that Yurik was a northerner based on his size. Yurik then asked him if all the northerners are slaves. The gladiator replied that not all of them, but some are, because of the northern expedition, which took nearly 10 years. Another gladiator caught his attention, so he asked about him. But other gladiators joined in the discussion and revealed that the gladiator Yurik was interested in is the only northerner gladiator troupe, known as Sven, who is a slave gladiator that survived in the troupe for over 3 years. The other gladiator who joined in the discussion welcomed Yurik, calling him newcomer, and then introduced himself as Donovan, the main attraction of the gladiator troupe. Donovan then said that he could smell Yurik as a barbarian, similar to the smell of a beast trying to be human. Yurik then replied sarcastically, saying that Donovan is quite good at spotting scents, who then explained that when he left for the barbarian subjugation, he had met countless barbarians like Yurik. Yurik then mocked him by repeating what Donovan said, but in a funny way, and then asks if it's his turn to introduce himself likewise, because from his experience, people like Donovan insult people with their tongues too much, more of words than action. He then taunted Donovan, saying that he could do this because his head is attached to his body after talking. The atmosphere got tense that there might be a fight very soon, due to timely interference from Horus, who retorted that they are not allowed to die until they pay him back. Donovan then told Yurik that they were lucky that they didn't fight, but I wonder who is the lucky one. Yurik claimed that his payment of 800,000 sil is quite cheap for him to be fighting with his life on the line, to which Horus told him that if everyone earned all of their share just by putting their lives on the line, then everyone will have to be filthy rich. He later met with Sven as they were arranged to fight as a team. Sven tried to give him some friendly pointers that it would be best for Yurik to put on a chest plate and helmet. Yurik replied that it would just make his body more heavy. They got to know each other. Sven noticed that Yurik had a good sword, especially from the one made from imperial steel. Yurik asked what he meant by imperial steel. Sven explains to him that it's iron that the imperial family has a monopoly on, and it's exceptionally stronger than regular iron, which is the reason why people call it steel. And those weapons are exclusive property of the Empire's knights, so it's quite difficult to even see one. This was how Yurik got to know that Portugal was an imperial knight. Meanwhile, Donovan, who was by the side, overheard the discussion, did not believe that's a real imperial sword, thinking that Yurik is being scammed. However, Yurik only looked at him and did not give him any response. Sven later asked Yurik where he was from, as he doesn't look like he was born and grew up in the Empire, to which Yurik told him that if he told him where he was from, he would be so shocked that he could faint. They both head over to the arena. There was a lot of excitement from the spectators. The reason was because the citizens of the Empire rarely go out to war themselves, so they get excited for blood. They picked their opponents, each to which Yurik's opponent felt that Yurik must be full of himself that he came out with only a single sword, whilst the opponent's defense was quite tight with the helmet and shield he had on. Yurik noticed this, but still charged towards at an insane speed and then suddenly jumped very high to the sky as he aimed at the opponent, who was stunned by this set of moves. And without any further ado, Yurik eliminates the opponent with just a single heavy stab into the chest, saying that is the reason why armor makes body heavier, and that would make one react slowly. People in the arena were shocked and thrilled at the same time. Many people thought he might be an acrobat or circus performer because of how high and perfectly he jumped. The crowd couldn't get enough of it, and their voices mixed into a cacophony of shocked screams and cheers. Yurik looked at Sven, who was standing nearby and acting calmly. He was very aware of what was going on. Yurik decided to offer Sven a hand because he saw that Sven wasn't involved in the fight yet. He asked, "Do you need any help?" His voice was a mix of worry and interest. Yurik didn't understand why Sven seemed so carefree, as if he was inviting his opponent to hit him without even putting up a defense. Sven, who was holding the huge two-handed bat-leagues, seemed strangely uninterested in the fight that was about to start. Yurik noticed how different their weapons were. The battle axe was strong, but it was hard to control compared to the one-handed sword's speed and accuracy. According to Yurik, Sven's fight was going to end soon. He thought the next big move would decide it. At the start of the fight, Sven's opponent lunged forward with a sword to get closer. What happened next shocked everyone in the room to silence. Sven moved so quickly that it was unsettling, and he swung his bat-league so smoothly that it didn't look like it was heavy. He killed his opponent with a single clean blow that left no trace. The people in the crowd let out gasps and murmurs of shock as they tried to figure out what they had just seen. With a smirk, Sven spoke to Yurik, but his tone was a bit dismissive and amused. "It's not very early for you to be offering help, Rat," he said in a tone that was both funny and rude. Sven's words had a tone of superiority that showed a deeper side of his personality. He looked at Yurik's youthful energy and enthusiasm with an amused affection, maybe because he saw something in him that reminded him of his own son, who had died when he was young. Sven was worried about the age difference. He couldn't help but think of Yurik, who looked to be 17 or 18 years old, as someone who was a lot like his own son if he had lived. Yurik could see that Sven has skills and guts, so he wondered why he was living as a slave. The spectators began to cheer in Yurik's name. Donovan had thought that Yurik had a death wish when he asked for a 1v2 fight, but he actually won. Yurik later met with the first slave gladiator in a tavern who said that Sven is quite special and that if Sven felt like it, Horus would welcome him even if he negotiated to be a free gladiator, but he chose to stay as a slave, and that from what he heard, Horus saved his life when he was adrift at sea, on the verge of dying. Since Horus treated him and even gave him a place to fight, this was enough reason for Sven to swear his loyalty to Horus as a northerner. The gladiator then asks Yurik if he knows about the Hill of Swords that the northern warriors go to when they die. Hill of Swords is the place where the great ancestors and warriors waited. It was a heaven where they could eat as much meat and drink as much alcohol as they wanted and fought to test each other's skills. Northerners were the most afraid of dying of a disease or in an accident because they believed that only warriors who died in battle were allowed to go to the Hill of Swords. This was not too different from what Yurik had heard from the stories in his motherland, as the elders believed that beyond the mountain range was a world of souls. However, that was wrong because this place where Yurik is presently, beyond the mountain range, is also a place where people live. This made him wonder where do their souls go when they die, so he asked the gladiator who was more civilized about where he would go when he died. The gladiator then showed him a necklace with the sun emblem, to which he replied that his soul returns to Ryu, the sun god, and then he will be reborn. The gladiator then added that it would be safe to say that all the empire's citizens are soul believers, including the kingdoms that belonged to the empire followed their lead, and also made soul their national religion. He even asked Yurik to convert to Sol. Meanwhile, Yurik claimed that since he believes in the sky, and the sun is part of the sky, then that means what he believes in is bigger. The gladiator only laughed it off, saying that everyone is free to believe what they want. He then finally introduced himself as Bachman. Bachman came to meet Yurik in his room, who was practicing battle axe throwing at a target on the wall. Bachman could see this is where Yurik had been spending all the money Horus gave him. It was all on axes. The main reason Bachman came to meet him is to discuss what's going on with the gladiators. It's about the Donovan's factions and the rest, to which Bachman explained that there are 21 people in the gladiators' troop, in which 10 are from Donovan's factions. including the fact that Donovan used to be a soldier. He was a part of Blade Master Purgin's troops. Whether that's true or not, Donovan is the most famous gladiator in Horus' troop. However, this was not a big deal. Meanwhile, the real problem Bachman came to discuss is that Donovan has his hands all over the most important match lists. The Donovan's faction takes all of the matches that are easy and profitable, while other gladiators take the troublesome ones. Yurik then asks that they should be able to refuse the ones that are troublesome since they are free gladiators after all. However, Bachman pointed out that they can't keep doing that since they would starve on the long run. Yurik then asked him why he was telling him all this, to which Bachman explained his thoughts that if a new stand-up gladiator appears with about as much influence as Donovan, then he won't be able to tamper with the match list as he pleases anymore. Yurik asked Bachman to just be the new stand-up gladiator since he hates Donovan that much, to which Bachman replied that even if he wants to, his skills come out too short, which is the reason why he is banking his expectations on Yurik. However, Yurik does not like those who sneakily use other people to do the work they themselves can't do. However, due to the fact that Bachman was the first person who approached and treated him well ever since he stepped foot into the civilized world, so he decided to help Bachman out. They proceed to start cooking up a plan for what he would do henceforth. Horus and Donovan were having a discussion about how to go about the next matches coming up. They planned to put those in bad conditions with the death inmates, since that's basically a free pass, and that Donovan would be the one to fight one of Baracal's slave gladiators. It was at this point that Yurik came in and requested that he should be the one to have the last match. Hearing this, Donovan stood up to face Yurik, asking him to leave right before he got angry. Yurik then said that he was not talking to him but to the leader, Horus, ignoring Donovan. However, Donovan immediately tells Horus not to listen to Yurik about being the one in charge of the last match. Horus then tried to explain to Yurik that the last match is the most important out of them all. Yurik insisted, saying that he is aware of that, and even added that he would fight 5 opponents all at once. However, Horus replied that if he ends up dying in a lame way, then it will be a blight on the troop. However, Yurik claimed that he is going to win, full of confidence, adding that he does not care about the number of opponents he is against, he is still going to win. Seeing that Yurik is not backing down, Donovan decided to let him have a go at this once just to show who is boss. So, he asked Horus to put Yurik in the last match, a 5-on-1 just like how he wanted. Yurik was glad that his request came through, and even praised Donovan for his generous heart. He then asked Horus to make a huge racket about him fighting 5-on-1. Horus simply gave in and agreed. The citizens were all talking about the lineups of the gladiator for the upcoming match, to which they felt Yurik is going past his limits by fighting 5 opponents all at once. They do not believe it's possible. Bachman came to see Yurik, as he was worried that Yurik had crossed his boundary by claiming that he can fight 5 opponents at once. He asked him to cancel the match immediately because he felt guilty since he was the one who brought up the issue about being the new stand-up gladiator. However, Yurik simply claimed that they are all worried because they do not know him or where he came from. Bachman felt that he is being reckless. He even made an example from the Battle of the South and the North, claiming that the South are more cool-headed, so they surrendered in just a year into the battle, to which they are now civilized and prospering. A stark contrast to the North, who fought the battle for 10 years and eventually lost. Yurik then said that Bachman is only worried about him losing, to which he asked what Bachman would do if he wins the match. Bachman then said that if Yurik should win the match, then he would follow his judgment without complaints henceforth. Yurik then proceeded to put on his war paint to his face. He was well aware that the match of 5 against 1 is quite dangerous, that he could die. However, he has no plans to die yet. He can win the match. It was soon his turn to fight, to which he came out with his menacing and blood-curdling appearance of his war face, heading to the arena. One of the important VIPs in the arena asked Horus about Yurik's match, wondering if it would be an interesting one. Horus assured him with a confident smile that he would surely enjoy it, no matter the outcome. Horus is quite confident in judging people and has a keen eye for making profitable bets like this one. His years of experience in the arena have honed his instincts, and he rarely misjudges the potential of a match or a fighter. Yurik was seen in the arena, his face adorned with menacing war paint that made his fierce expression even more intimidating. He stood with his sword in hand, ready to face his 5 opponents. These opponents were not ordinary men. They were death row inmates who had been promised a reduction in their sentences if they managed to kill Yurik. The prospect of freedom had lit a fire in their eyes, and they appeared eager and ready to fight. Among the spectators, Bachman watched with growing concern. He knew that these opponents were not to be taken lightly. The way they held their weapons and their confident stances indicated that they were skilled fighters, likely criminals who had volunteered for this opportunity in hopes of shortening their time behind bars. Bachman's worry was palpable as he understood the gravity of the situation and the danger Yurik faced. Beside Bachman, Sun also observed the scene intently, though his expression was harder to read. He seemed focused, analyzing the combatants with a keen eye, perhaps evaluating their strengths and weaknesses. Meanwhile, Donovan, standing a few steps away, wore a different expression. He appeared almost pleased with the situation. Donovan had long harbored ill feelings toward Yurik and saw this match as an opportunity to finally get rid of him. The dangerous challenge that Yurik faced was, in Donovan's eyes, a chance for his problem to be resolved without his direct involvement. The 5 opponents got into their battle stances, their weapons at the ready, and began to encircle Yurik. He quickly assessed the situation, noting that while they were armed and dangerous, they lacked any semblance of cooperative strategy. Their only advantage was their numbers, and Yurik could tell that none of them had the intention to initiate the attack. Sensing their hesitation and recognizing an opportunity, Yurik decided to take the initiative. Without warning, Yurik charged at the opponent directly in front of him. The man raised his shield in an attempt to block the attack, but Yurik's speed and precision were unmatched. With a powerful thrust, he drove his sword through the shield and into the man's heart, killing him instantly. The swift and deadly move left the remaining 4 opponents momentarily stunned. Seeing their comrade fall so easily spurred the other 4 into action. They rushed at Yurik simultaneously, their weapons aimed to strike him down. Yurik, however, was ready for their onslaught. He deftly dodged their attacks, moving with the agility and precision of a seasoned warrior. Each swing and thrust missed its mark as Yurik skillfully evaded their blows, creating space between himself and his attackers. With a moment's respite, Yurik seized the opportunity to switch weapons. He reached behind him and drew his battle axe, its gleaming blade catching the light as he raised it high. With a mighty roar, he hurled the axe toward the nearest opponent. The weapon spun through the air with deadly accuracy, embedding itself in the man's chest and killing him instantly. Yurik seized the moment when one of the opponents hesitated after witnessing their comrade killed with a headshot from the battle axe. Utilizing this lapse in concentration, he swiftly dispatched another foe, his movements precise and lethal. The crowd's cheers grew louder, amplifying the tension and excitement in the arena. Among the spectators, Donovan was visibly shocked. He had just realized that the sword Yurik wielded was no ordinary weapon. It was an imperial steel sword. This type of sword was known for its unmatched strength and durability, qualities that allowed Yurik to perform feats that would have shattered or bent ordinary weapons. Donovan's mind raced with questions. How could a barbarian, who wasn't a noble, come into possession of such a valuable and rare weapon? Bachman, on the other hand, was quite pleased with the turn of events. He could see the progress of the battle favoring Yurik, and his confidence in Yurik's abilities was being validated with each opponent that fell. Sven, standing nearby, offered his own perspective. He pointed out that the battle might have played out very differently if Yurik's opponents had been trained soldiers. These inmates, while dangerous, lacked the discipline and strategic coordination of a professional military unit. Yurik was able to dominate them with sheer force and the psychological pressure he exerted, his menacing war paint only adding to their fear. The inmates were terrified, their initial bravado crumbling under Yurik's relentless assault, allowing him to control the pace of the battle. Sven was quite surprised that such a young man like Yurik already knew how to fight against multiple opponents with such skill and confidence. He realized that it must have been this very confidence that led Yurik to propose the fight in the first place. Sven watched in amazement as Yurik swiftly took down another opponent, leaving only 2 remaining. With a smirk, Yurik taunted the final 2, urging them to come at him since, as he put it, they didn't really have a choice. Fueled by desperation and adrenaline, the 2 remaining opponents charged at him with a shout, hoping to overwhelm him with their combined assault. Yurik, however, moved with effortless precision, easily parrying their attacks and countering with devastating blows. In a matter of moments, both opponents lay defeated on the ground. Feeling that the match had become boring, Yurik stood amidst the fallen men, his expression one of mild disappointment. The crowd erupted in cheers, celebrating his victory and marveling at his prowess. Yurik had won the match, proving his dominance and skill in the arena. Meanwhile, Bachman and Sven were visibly pleased with the outcome. Bachman, who had been worried initially, now felt a sense of pride and relief. Sven, though surprised by Yurik's capabilities, was glad to see the young warrior emerge victorious. Donovan, however, was less pleased. He watched Yurik bask in the glory of his victory for a moment before turning away in frustration. After the fight, Bachman and a few other gladiators crowded around Yurik to cheer him on and tell him how well he did. The happy mood changed, though, when Donovan walked in. All of a sudden, the other gladiators leaving Yurik and Donovan alone. Even though Donovan was angry earlier, he kept his cool. He said that Yurik had become the rising star of the Horus gladiator group. His voice was a mix of grudging respect and irritation that was hard to see. After giving a nod, Donovan put out his hand. Yurik shook hands with him because he knew what the action meant. The firm handshake was a quiet vote of confidence in Yurik's skills and the praise he deserved. Yurik had a very exciting dream about his brothers from the old country. In the dream, they had finally reached a rich, fertile land that was full of useful things. When his brothers realized they wouldn't have to go hungry anymore, they were so happy that their faces lit up with hope and relief. As Yurik watched them be happy, he felt a deep feeling of peace and accomplishment. The sound of someone calling his name suddenly broke up the dream. When Yurik blinked his eyes open, Bachman was standing over him and gently shook him awake. He was tired and confused. Bachman said that the leader of the troop was looking for him, most likely to talk about the match list. He went over. Yurik met Donovan, to which the troop leader, Horus, and began by explaining that they have been assigned 5 matches, but one of them is a match against a champion, to which Donovan suggests that they should use a slave as a throwaway then. Yurik asked why they need to do that since they can just simply win the match. However, Horus told him that they have slave gladiators for matches like that, as there are some matches they are not supposed to win. Horus then continued, explaining that the matches assigned to them were in the first half of the event. Donovan, eager to prove himself, offered to participate in the match against the Aragon gladiators. However, Horus informed him that it was a 3 versus 3 pride match between 2 gladiator troops. He expressed his desire for both Donovan and Yurik to compete together. Despite Horus's suggestion, both Donovan and Yurik were acutely aware of the lack of camaraderie. They knew they did not trust each other enough to watch each other's backs in the heat of battle. Sensing the tension, Horus made a decision. He gave Yurik the honor of not only participating but also choosing the other 2 gladiators who would fight alongside him for the prize of 1.5 million sil. Donovan, displeased and ready to voice his objections, was swiftly silenced by Horus. Horus reminded Donovan that he had his way in the last match, and now it was Yurik's turn to take the lead. Yurik, recognizing the opportunity and responsibility, readily agreed. Yurik made a bold idea while thinking about the best way to win the upcoming pride match. He suggested that one of the slaves, Sven, be added to the list. For their part, the other 2 people would each get 2 million sil. While Horus thought about the offer, he made a new one with a different price, 1.8 million sil. Once everyone agreed on the terms, Yurik, Bachman, and Sven were picked to represent their group in the pride match. The arrangement was being written down by Horus, and Yurik was watching with increasing interest. He realized that in the civilized world, history and deals were kept in writing, which was very different from the way things were done in his home country, where stories were told orally. The fact that Yurik knew this made him feel amazed. He started to realize how important it was to be able to read and write. He realized that being literate could give him access to a lot of information and knowledge that he hadn't had before. While Yurik and his team were getting ready for their pride match, he talked to Sven, who was going to fight with them. Yurik was interested in why Sven was still a slave. With a resigned but calm face, Sven told him that Horus had given him the chance to go to the Hill of Swords, which was said to be the best place for a fighter to die in battle. He also said that if he hadn't acted quickly, his soul might have been sent to live on in the world of the living forever. For Sven, the idea of dying in battle was better because it was the only way he could find meaning in his life and get out of the confusion he was in now. Yurik was interested in Sven's determination, so he asked about his home country and family. As Sven talked about his sad past, his face turned sad. He told them that he had lost everything, including his family and his home country. After a war broke out against the kingdom, his family had to leave. They were moving east, and Sven and the other men with wives and kids were responsible for making sure they would stay alive and get to their destination safely. Sven talked about a story he had heard before his life became chaotic. People said that there was another place just across the Eastern Sea. According to the stories, their relatives had gone to this strange land where people with black-haired eyes lived. However, Sven got shipwrecked and ended up becoming a slave. At the time, Backman came over to their side as he and Yurik both laughed at Sven, who said that they can make fun of him as he made a foolish decision then. Meanwhile, his final wish is to die while fighting so he can go to the Hill of Swords. Backman then informs Sven that there is a cliff in the Eastern Sea and that the end of the sea is just a cliff, and that's where Sven's people might have fallen to their deaths. However, Sven would not agree, to which he and Backman kept on bickering at each other. Yurik then said he does not really care about the land in the east or the world's edge, as he doesn't believe that sea is actually a large place in the first place, to which the two shouted at him in response that the sea is so big that it can't be fathomed. Soon, it was their turn. They took their weapons and headed to the arena with imposing manners. Meanwhile, their opponents are also in their battle form, to which an intense fight is about to begin any moment. Horus stood in the middle of the crowd, enjoying the love and support of the people who were cheering for their favorite fighter. Horus thanked the people who were there for their continued support. The mood was happy and thankful. While Horus was talking with the champion about the details of the last match, Treos walked in with a big bang. Treos was eager to show off the amazing skills of his champion and started passionately to talk about how his fighter, who was known for being great with axes, would be a great addition to the team. Treos was sure that Horus would be blown away by the champion's skills, which he thought were better than those of most gladiators. Treos, who was full of confidence, told Magi, who was his winner, to show off his skills. He was very proud of Magi's powers and said that Magi could do things that most gladiators couldn't even dream of. When Treos spoke, he sounded cocky because he thought Magi's act would be so much better than the others that it would stick with Horus. In spite of this, Magi, who had been quietly watching, knew that Treos' claims were not true. He understood Treos' excitement, but he also thought Treos' accounts were almost too good to be true. Magi knew that big statements about skill weren't enough to judge someone's skill. They had to be seen and heard. What Magi thought and what was on his mind a lot was the harsh truth of the situation. He was very aware of Yurik's impressive skills because he had seen them in motion. Magi thought that Yurik was a much better fighter than him in terms of skill and strength. The champion saw the countenance on Magi's face, so decided to ask him if he would actually embarrass him, because he seemed to be scared. Yurik, on the other hand, was spying on them and was surprised that Magi could eventually agree to throw it after the way Treos had talked to him. So, Backman explained to Yurik that it is expected of Magdi because if a noble asks one to throw something, then the person must have to throw it regardless of how capable he may be. But Yurik actually hoped that the servant's head, that they were throwing it at, would not split in two. Backman, who knew that Yurik is more skilled than Treos and Magi, teased Yurik that Magi might throw the axes better than him, but Yurik was confident in himself that there's no one that can throw it better than he does. However, Backman questioned Yurik to know how he was so sure that the Magi guy would mess up anyway, because he felt like he is also a champion. Yurik then explained how Treos has completely ruined his father's business, and despite that, he has not come to his senses yet, because individuals like him would only cause harm, and it will not be beneficial for someone to associate with him. Thereafter, Yurik and Backman went to meet Horus, but he chased them away, especially Yurik claiming that it cannot be possible because it will be just like he is feeding an already full lion. Meanwhile, Yurik found the whole thing fun enough, but he was not allowed to stay. There was one guy who did not expect to see Yurik at the place because it was Donovan's match, and so he should not have any work to do. But Yurik, on the other hand, wondered why Treos is throwing away his champion just because he messed up throwing an axe. Backman was not surprised at all, as he expected that from Treos, being a noble, so he can definitely buy as many gladiators as he wants. Treos' condition was not good, as he looked like he had been really pissed. The match, which Yurik actually came to watch, was between a guy and two lions, in which Yurik studied the guy very well, and Kulpt noticed that the guy's left arm had been broken and his leg also seems to be fractured, so he is not in good condition. Backman wondered how Yurik was able to see all of that from where he was standing. The guy fought with the two lions and the match finished. Then the next match was announced. and it was another guy who seemed to be cunning but still fights standardly, as he was known to have never taken a dangerous risk before. And he was also known to always suffocate his enemies slowly like a snake before killing them. Backman thought Yurik would want to watch the match, but unfortunately, he decided to take his leave as he was hungry, so he was less concerned with the match. After a while, Yurik was seen by Horus. Horus was on the horse, dozing off a little, and Yurik cautioned him that he may fall off if he continues dozing off like that. So Horus headed to the caution, and as they took off, he decided to narrate some story of what happened in the back, so the journey would not be boring for them. He narrated how he had met countless gladiators in the past decade, and that he has been managing the troupe, but he could testify that Yurik is kinda different from his other gladiators, whereby he felt like Yurik's lifestyle would be different from his gladiators. Yurik made Horus know how he had given him so much praise even though he was just a barbarian that does not know about the world. But Horus knew that was a joke because he wondered how barbarian would not know much about the world. However, Yurik liked the place he was with Horus. But Horus did not believe Yurik that he liked the place he was there. Meanwhile, that was why Yurik wanted to own the land at the place they were. When Horus heard him talk about it, he was shocked. But later he told Yurik that if he had a lot of money with him, then he would be able to buy land in the countryside. Whereas, in Horus's mind, he was asking the gods if it would be okay if he kept Yurik with him. Yurik then asked him where they were heading to next and when they would arrive at the sea as well. So, Horus replied that they are still far from a coastal town, therefore their plans would still be the same, according to what Horus told him last time. All of a sudden, Yurik asked Horus if he can read and write, and he replied that he can. So Yurik asked him to teach him as well. He wanted to know about letter writing. But Horus explained to him that it is not something he can learn in one day, and he agreed, even though Horus was not ready to teach him for free. Then, Yurik asked him to deduct 10% from his pay for the teaching fee. Since he agreed on paying Horus then told him to come and meet him after he's done with dinner, so they can start from how to write his name. Immediately, he heard that he was so happy. After dinner, Yurik's companions anticipated that he would join them for a round of dice, a regular pastime among the gladiators. However, to their surprise, Yurik declined their invitation and prepared to leave. When they inquired about his destination, Yurik nonchalantly replied that he wasn't interested in playing dice at the moment and mentioned that he didn't have any money on him. One of his mates, perceptive and observant, had picked up on a clue that suggested Yurik might not be entirely truthful. He had overheard that Yurik had been engaged in learning the imperial language from Horus. The mate was concerned, questioning why Yurik would be investing time in such an endeavor, fearing it might be a dangerous pursuit for his mental faculties. Despite this concern, Yurik dismissed it, seeing no harm in his pursuit of literacy. With determination, he continued on his way to Horus's quarters. Upon arriving at Horus's residence, Yurik approached the guards and announced his purpose. He was granted entry and soon found himself standing before Horus. The sight of Yurik seeking him out at such an hour was unexpected, and Horus was taken aback. He hadn't anticipated that Yurik's interest in learning to read was genuine and earnest. Horus was initially skeptical about the practical value of literacy for a gladiator like Yurik. He wondered how learning to read and write could benefit someone who was primarily a warrior. That being said, Yurik quickly told Horus that his main goal wasn't to learn the language in a useful way. Instead, he was more interested in his own judgment and how the information could help him in the future. Yurik was determined to learn the language on his own terms, as shown by his choice to take charge of his own learning. Now that Horus knew that, he went on with the lesson. He started by putting down some simple letters and characters. His name was the first one he used as an example. Horus carefully showed each letter and talked about how it looked and sounded. By the end of the night, he wanted Yurik to be able to remember these names and write them on his own. Horus was impressed by how quickly Yurik was learning, so he chose to find out again if Yurik had ever read before. He asked Yurik if he knew how to read, but Yurik told him straight out that he didn't. This was exactly why he had asked Horus for help that night, to learn from the very beginning. Horus was impressed by how quickly Yurik had learnt the letters. This made him curious. Even though the job was very easy, Yurik was able to remember and copy the characters very well after only a few tries. Horus was so amazed by this feat that he felt the need to explain what Yurik had done before. Horace was shocked when Yurik did something even worse. With a focused look on his face, Yurik said Horace's name out loud and asked him if he got it right. Horace was shocked by how very clearly Yurik spoke. Yurik, who had just started reading, was able to correctly copy the letters and say them, which showed how quickly he could learn and how well he could pay attention to details. Horace looked amazed and said that he agreed with Yurik that he was indeed right. Then, at that point, Yurik was sure that he would be able to master the pronunciation real fast, as that was not that hard for him. Even Horace could not argue with him again, because he was sure that he would do it, and he has seen that his memory is incredible, just as what he heard about the barbarians, that they do learn how to read very faster than thought, but Yurik's own was more impressive. Horace kept teaching, and he showed Yurik how to write different words. Beginning with simple words like sword and spear, he showed Yurik how to correctly make each letter and put them together. Horace was impressed by how quickly Yurik learned the basics. He was sure that Yurik was well on his way to learning how to read and write well. He then told Yurik to write the word axe. A sudden, important news broke the peace of the evening just as Yurik was about to start writing. A voice hurriedly told everyone that the troop was being attacked, which made the air tense. An enemy trap had been found. When the gladiators were quickly woken up from their sleep, chaos broke out. The gladiators rushed to their posts and grabbed their weapons and shields to get ready for the fight that was about to start. The place that was once calm and organized was now full of hectic activity. People in the troop were confused and scared as they tried to figure out who the attackers were and why they would be so bold as to attack a gladiator group. Horace felt a wave of fear when he heard about the ambush. The news was shocking and made me feel lost. The sudden and terrifying threat of an attack broke the peace that had been with them on their journey. He stood there frozen, trying to figure out how bad things were. The idea of an ambush itself was scary, especially when they thought about who their enemies were. There was a big difference between them and other groups he knew, like merchant convoys or easy targets. They were gladiator troops. Yurik saw right away how important the situation was. He told Horace to find a safe place to hide very quickly and without hesitation. Yurik wanted to protect Horace because he knew that the main thing that mattered was keeping the troops' leaders safe and making sure that Horace was safe. Yurik knew that the operation would fail and Horace's leadership over the gladiators would be called into question if he were captured or hurt. While Yurik was still thinking about that was when Horace was suddenly shot an arrow in his throat, and he tried to check if he could find something to do to it. But then he found that it was already deep in the neck and there was nothing he could do. So he told Horace that he would soon die, so he should just pray to his God before he would die. When Horace heard this, he was scared but could not talk. Yurik then comforted him not to shake, rather he should be prepared to die, as he might reincarnate. Yurik just hoped that they would meet once again in the world of the living. Thereafter, he swore to the skies as Yurik from the Stone Axe tribe, with his name, that he would not make the people that attacked them that night see it another day, as he wanted Horace to die peacefully without worrying about revenge. After Yurik has finished saying what he wanted Horace to hear him say, he removes the arrow so he can die. And after Horace died, he pledged to stick to his promise. Horace's death triggered Yurik a lot, that his face changed and he was all about killing that night. He has worn another behavior on, immediately after Horace's death.